I do get to talk about Spider-Man, but unfortunately, it's not the fun kind of Spider-Man. It's the Spider-Man that was made.
By white people.
Yeah, I mean, most
Very
Spider-Man was made by
clearly
white
made by white
people,
people.
but we're
It's made
talking
by
about
white people who feel self-conscious about being white and are trying not to be, which is the worst, the second
more
worst kind of white
importantly,
person.
it's any Spider-Man comic that came out after like 1996. It's like it really just fucking my god.
Welcome, everybody, to
Welcome.
another episode of Marvelous or the Death of Cinema. Today, we're stepping a little out of chronological order, which we have every right to do. It's our show. Shut up. And we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the animated film for all ages that everybody loves and adores. 1 million stars on Letterboxd.
Our first animated film for the podcast.
Our first animated film. And before we get into the movie proper, Cole is going to continue a little bit where we left off with the people's history of Spider-Man and set up some background on the comics and the creation of the Miles Morales, the Jefferson Miles Davis Morales.
Miles per hour.
Miles Tales per hour Spider-Man. And
Sonic!
And give us a little bit of context that we're going to need for what we have to say about this movie going in. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, go off, Queen.
Yeah. So, Spider-Man, you might have heard of it. Sometimes he's a black guy. And some of you, actually, I'm looking at Miles's Wikipedia right now, and they have like, you know how like it'll have like the redirect to like if you're on the wrong page, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one has a redirect for the black Spider-Man costume. See Symbiote Comics. So,
it's
a lot of people have been just searching Black Spider-Man. Does the symbiote make Peter Parker a person of color?
Good question. We'll have to save that for Venom.
I think that since the symbiote never fully merged with Peter, it doesn't count. Because that's why Venom talks as one person. You know, he does the "we are Venom" thing. He's like non-binary with it.
Does he say stuff about turds floating in the wind in the comics too?
You come in here again. In fact, you go anywhere in the city preying on innocent people, and we will find you and eat both your arms and then both of your legs, and then we will eat your face right off your head. Do you understand? Please. Yes. So you will be this armless, legless, faceless thing, won't you? Rolling down the street like a turd in the wind.
So you could say Venom is like a metaphor for the creation of the Miles Morales Spider-Man character.
You could kind of say that.
A white guy wearing a black suit.
Yeah. So in the Ultimate Universe, which is a hop, skip, and a jump away from the regular Marvel universe.
Quick, what's the short definition? What is the difference between regular and the Ultimate?
So the Ultimate was made in I want to say 2000 or 2001 as sort of like a this is the new hotness kind of universe. You know, they only picked writers that were up and coming and sort of well liked, and they had the complete keys to their own universe. They could go off in a new direction and make updated versions of characters that you're familiar with, but were much more tuned for a sort of 2000s audience. Because at this point,
it's new metal Marvel.
It is new metal Marvel. At this point,
is it post
the
9/11
Ultimate
Marvel?
Universe. No, actually, it's during 9/11 Marvel, for the most part. In fact, it's it wouldn't shy away from like Bush era politics at all. If we eventually ever cover another Avengers film, I'll sort of talk maybe in a bonus episode or something about how basically most of the MCU isn't really based on the actual mainstream Marvel comics. They're much more the Ultimate interpretations. One that
which
just
probably
sort of
made a lot of
immediately-
sense when it first started in the late 2000s.
It did. In fact, part of the reason why was because Mark Millar, who first created the Ultimate Universe, used artist Brian Hitch, who would actually base the each one of the characters off of a specific actor.
Oh, isn't he the guy that helped Paul Blart get pussy?
What?
The movie Hitch, the completely remembered
God,
movie Hitch.
what the f-
Because that sucked, Stu. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I mean, I'm
man.
hitting you with the
yeah.
with the sad horn.
So Ultimate Peter was they took him back to high school. They got rid of all of the complicated like years and decades of continuity drama, and they're just like, we're doing a story about what if Peter Parker was a kid growing up in 2000. You know, he sags his pants. His parents are sort of like older boomers instead of like people that were alive during the Great Depression. In fact, Uncle Ben sort of received a huge facelift where he went from being, instead of like you know, ancient handyman union laborer kind of guy, now he's like an ex-hippie that's like, I think he's working in like fucking like technology or something. Like it's much more like, what did a New York middle class family look like in 1999 to 2000?
It's what my old man would have called a Wonder Bread wop. You know, he eats his Sunday gravy out of a jar.
Yeah.
And the Ultimate Universe initially was huge. It was the hotness. It was outselling the main books, and especially Ultimate Spider-Man, because writer Brian Michael Bendis drew a lot from the fact that he was on the younger side. You know, most of the people at Marvel were like pushing 50, and here comes this like 34-year-old guy or something around that age, you know, coming off the cusps of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and like the Joss Whedon sort of like teen drama aesthetic.
And he's
he
a Whedon
applied
affiliated guy. They have a character.
Yeah, they're not
Firefly.
directly, but they have a very similar writing style where they're like, they're hyper fixated on like what teenagers in the 90s thought was cool, or outsider teenagers in the 90s thought was cool. Same with like Kevin Smith and Mallrats.
Yeah.
That sort of style
Gen
of
X.
writing.
Yeah.
Where you're focused on like, we want the Simpsons season 1 audience.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Ultimate Spider-Man was a huge hit, especially because the main comics at the time were kind of dipping off. This was when you had the not quite One More Day, but you were getting close, and it was looming there. It was really sort of starting to wind down, and this book offered a fresh take on Spider-Man, and it brought it back to what people sort of associate with the character, which is like a young guy sort of figuring shit out in his early teen years to early adulthood. And this book lasted for like 200 fucking issues. It's the longest running Ultimate book by like a country mile.
What would you make of this original Ultimate Spider-Man run as a book?
I actually like it. This is the only Brian Michael Bendis comic that I will ever say is like actually good. I think that like, even though it is essentially Joss Whedon's Spider-Man, that just, it works. It really does. Like you can really update that, like that teen. You're taking him from like kind of an outsider, like not quite a hippie, not quite a prep kid, to like a slacker that wears, cargo pants, and has a dad that like used to
Is
smoke
that
a
an
lot of pot.
Offspring
It's
T-shirt?
very appropriate for the era, 'cause that would make him like very, very slightly younger than like my big sister.
Yeah, I mean, like it was like they basically turned him into Bart Simpson, like that kind of character, like a rebel, but not quite. But he's also kind of a nerd, but he doesn't quite fit in. And I think
Well,
that this is
that
the
was
only
when we
Ultimate
first-
comic.
That was when it first became kind of cool to be a nerd.
Exactly.
era.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah,
could
and
skateboard and hack
So how does
computers.
this all tie into Miles Morales?
So the Ultimate Universe, as the years were not kind to the Ultimate Universe. So the years weren't kind to anything that was like hyper fixated to the Y2K era. And after a couple particularly infamously bad crossover events, the Ultimate Universe was kind of just left to die. And after a comic crossover called Ultimate Fallout, they just straight up decided to kill off Peter Parker Spider-Man because he'd kind of been spinning his wheels. I think I don't remember how exactly the series goes, but I believe sort of diverging from the common like evolution of Spider-Man, I think he drops out of college to become Spider-Man like full time. Similar to the MCU Peter Parker, where he's sort of closely affiliated with Shield. Like Nick Fury is a huge character in these Ultimate Spider-Man books, but he
And
gets his
that's
ass
where,
fucking murked.
That's where Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury.
Yes,
comes
this
from,
was
right?
this
You
was
said
where
they're
the
all kind of
first
modeled on actors.
the first Black Nick Fury comes from as well. Not made by Brian Michael Bendis. That was actually a Mark Millar creation.
You said
Explicitly,
you said it was Mark Millar earlier who kind of
Yeah.
originated the trend of having a celebrity.
In fact, in the trade notes for the first Ultimates series, you'll see him talking about who he would cast in an Ultimates movie, and he explicitly says like you can't do Nick Fury without Sam Jackson. So he's sort of to blame, I guess, for why the MCU is like that. But I mean, it was sort of always going to happen. They introduced a Black Nick Fury into the mainstream comic universe shortly after the first I think it was the second Iron Man film where he shows up.
Yeah.
And it was all things were leading to the MCU. But in the Ultimate Comics, Peter Parker got fucking murked, got his ass beaten across New York City by Green Goblin, and yeah, he died. He just fucking died. Similar, actually, in this movie. They go to that fucking Trinity Church or whatever. Aunt May gives a big tearful speech. Mary Jane's there. Gwen Stacy, who is Carnage in this universe, is there. And
nobody can see on because I'm on camera, but I just made a like a what the fuck face. But anyway, go on.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we'll get to it. I'll explain. Yeah,
whatever.
And in the Peter Parker funeral issue, they reveal that this random Puerto Rican kid was sort of saw the whole thing go down, and he actually witnessed Peter Parker fucking die. I don't think he had spider powers yet. I can't remember. I haven't actually read these comics since I was like fucking 15, and I have no drive to ever revisit them because Miles Morales kind of fucking sucks, and like not in like a not my Spider-Man kind of way, in that by the 2010s the Joss Whedon type of writer had completely lost the juice, they had completely fucking lost it. And I'm just going to hit a few important details on the creation of Miles Morales, because you have to realize that this character, and I really hate to say this because it's sort of like almost a conservative talking point, but he's kind of an astroturfed like hype character, like he was always created to be something more talked about than actually read.
Well, I mean,
And
that's
that
so
was all
much
that was set
of
up.
this stuff
Yeah.
now. The last
Yeah,
10
that
or
was
so
set up from
years.
the very beginning. Because before Miles ever shows up in the comics, Marvel actually leaked some of the issue where he first becomes Spider-Man to USA Today about like 3 weeks before the actual comic dropped. And it's very interesting that that it was 2011, the year that Miles came to be, because there's a very well known. In fact, if you're more of a cartoon person, you'll recognize this name. A very well known comic book writer who was sort of the first very visibly black person in comics and cartooning, by the name of Dwayne McDuffie. He helped create Ben 10. He wrote the film adaptation of All Star Superman. He wrote the really good seasons of the Bruce Timm Justice League cartoon. Like, this guy was just a fucking powerhouse. He created Static Shock, um, founded Milestone Media, which was the first POC owned and operated comic book imprint. Although they did, because, and this is something that never really gets brought up. It was never about you know, it was never about exclusion. It was about integration and sort of equity, because Milestone Media did actually employ a lot of white people. In fact, from the very beginning, there were white people working on it, but all of the people in positions of power were people that he personally felt weren't represented at Marvel and DC. In fact,
In a
he had
literal
worked
sense of like
in a
not
literal sense.
getting work
Yes,
and getting their creative input in and stuff. Like,
because he was an editor at Marvel for several years and penned a letter that I'm going to read here.
Yes,
Sort of complaining.
this is insane.
Yes,
I couldn't
this was written
believe
in
what I was seeing.
1989. This is written
This
in
wasn't from
1989, and
yeah, this isn't from like 1922 or
it
like
is complaining about the exact issue that Miles Morales has, which is that everyone involved in his creation was white. No, there was not a single, and I don't think that you have to have that. You could, like, white people can write black characters, right? White people can create black characters, but this was a character that was designed to be talked about because he is black, because he is not white, and
oh, okay. I thought
to
you
do
were
that.
referring to that teenage
No,
uh
I'm gonna get
skateboard.
to the letter. So
Okay.
I'm gonna read the letter. But Miles, it's very important to note, like, Miles isn't like a Black Lightning or a Steel or any of the other black characters that have existed for a while. He was created to be controversial from the jump. You know, he was created
he's
to
a
start discourse.
product of social media era branding.
Exactly. It actually more the news, because I remember being like, I think I was 13 or something when this came out. And I remember like my local news was running a story about it. Like the news in San Francisco was talking about this. Like, this was on TV, like, oh, outrage against, a black Spider-Man. And there really wasn't any outrage. It was all there was always like a conservative minority, but
That's the thing.
those people don't fucking buy comics. Like, who cares?
A lot of those guys, like, even now, like Gamergate, whatever, they're not consequential, but they get a lot of attention
Yeah.
because their hostility is itself a valuable marketing buzz. Drawing attention
Exactly.
to
They
them
only
is lucrative.
All these people only exist on social media and on blogs and on YouTube. They don't represent any actual purchasing power. Like, Get Woke, Go Broke doesn't exist in real life at all.
No.
Like, short of like calling in a bomb threat, like what you're seeing with Target, where there have been so many like death threats against Target employees for stocking Pride merchandise that they've had to recall all of the Pride merchandise.
Yeah.
You're sort of that's how these fandoms operate, where it is controlling the discourse, but never actually like voting with your wallet, because these people were never going to buy it in the first place.
Yeah. Through intensity of engagement, though, but not being like any really large constituency.
Exactly.
That's the flipwise true of the like Tumblr SJW archetype, is like the exact same thing.
Yes.
In that respect.
Although I will say more of those people are likely to buy comics than the Republican
That
ones,
is
just because
true, yeah.
like occasionally, they'll get like a Fujo book in there. They'll get like some like, like the current Nightwing book is like the #1 selling comic book right now because every issue is just like Nightwing with his shirt off in the shower. And they realize
we
that
found
like
a comic book for Nicole.
Yeah, we found it. Yeah.
But Dwayne McDuffie in 1989 wrote a letter to the editors-in-chief of Marvel commenting on how white their black characters were, to sum it up. And I'm going to read you this letter. So, in the past year, 25% of all African-American superheroes appearing in the Marvel Universe possessed skateboard-based superpowers. In an attempt to remain on the cutting edge of comics, I hereby propose a new series that will fully exploit this exciting new trend. Teenage Negro Ninja Thrashers. When a group of teenage Negroes find cosmic-powered skateboards, their lives are forever changed. A team of distinct characters join together, swearing an oath to use their powers for good. And he goes on to list several characters, including actually two of the three characters are actual real characters that were being pushed by Marvel at the time. So you have Rocket Racer, a black guy on a skateboard, Night Thrasher, a black guy on a skateboard, and Dark Wheelie, a black guy on a skateboard.
That sounds like one of your shit.
Rocket Racer and Night Thrasher are real characters. I'm not sure about Dark Wheelie. It genuinely wouldn't surprise me.
I didn't know when I read this they were real. God, that's funny.
And their leader, the mysterious black guy on a skateboard, known only as that mysterious black guy on a skateboard. This is a surefire hit as it contains all of these popular elements. Circa 1974 clothing and hairstyles, bizarre speech patterns, unrecognizable by any member of any culture on the planet. A smart white friend to help them out of the trouble that they get into. They're heroes who could be you, if you were black, I mean. If they're on skateboards, they have an attractive white female friend to calm them down when they get too excited. Face it, Pilgrim, this one's got it all. And Dwayne McDuffie later left Marvel, went over to DC, made some great stuff. His Marvel stuff is also incredible. He did a comedic series called Damage Control. It's great. He's great. R.I.P. a real one, because he passed away
really?
He did?
6 months before Miles was revealed to the public, actually. And really, you can't see Miles without seeing, especially the Spider-Verse version, without seeing like this is the Antichrist, so to speak, of that McDuffie warned us about, because even in the comics, he's like a white man's interpretation of what a black teenager would be like.
Yeah,
from the very beginning. I mean, people on Twitter have been constantly pointing out that his father's name is Jefferson Davis, a president of the Confederacy, and he's a police officer. Apparently, now Bendis has explained that he has a friend named Jefferson Davis, allegedly. I don't know anything about that.
It's actually a common name.
I believe
Jeff.
it. I
Not-
do.
maybe not
I do.
Jefferson,
That is
but Jeff
that is
Davis.
the that is
Are you
that is
sure
like
he wasn't
that
thinking of the Jeffersons?
I think that's what I was going to say. I think he's thinking of the Jeffersons and Miles Davis.
That is
and
one of the sort of like the pyramid of whiteness that is the creation of Miles Morales.
And it extends
Wait,
to
are you
the
saying
movie.
white people can make pyramids?
Let's just
I mean, the Jews built them, right?
I mean, to interject really quickly here before
go
we
ahead.
continue, but like as someone who, like, when I first saw Spider-Verse, I gave it like a solid 4.5 out of 5, and on rewatch, it is very obviously a movie written by well-meaning but totally like your average bog standard Hollywood lib white person.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair, the reason why Miles was created is because Bendis is like 8 black kids that he's adopted from Ethiopia. He loves making black characters. The black girl Iron Man that we'll see in Black Panther 2 was created by him.
Okay.
There's a character Naomi over at DC Comics who had a brief like 4 episode television series on the CW, was also created by him, because Bendis is for some reason like the GOAT at getting royalties.
He also executive produced this movie.
He executive produced this movie. He worked on all of the Marvel Netflix shows, I believe. There are parts of the Daredevil show that are based on his Daredevil run. He created Jessica Jones.
He created Jessica Jones. Okay.
He did, actually. I recently read the Jessica Jones comic. It fucking sucks. It is so Whedon that it hurts. Like, and
I wouldn't be surprised.
that's like probably his most well-liked comic.
There's something about like being like having all like male like feministy themes, but then also you're just totally working through your fucking mind controlled fetish.
Also, maybe a race play fetish, because in like the second issue of Jessica Jones, she's like having like a traumatic episode, so she calls up Luke Cage, and then Luke Cage has anal sex with her so that she can like calm down. Wait,
how is it specifically?
It's heavily implied in the writing.
Just look up the page.
It's heavily implied in the writing because. Fucking strange, man. Anyways, the second rung on Miles Morales sort of totem pole of shit is that Miles Morales was visually inspired by, and in fact nearly all of the reason for his being was the fact that Obama was elected president. He is visually inspired by a teenage Obama. He was in fact, there's like I'll have to see if I can find it, but there's an interview where he's like holding up a picture of Obama like next to the fucking the book stack or whatever. So there's that. And then there's the fact that originally, if you follow traditional naming structure, Miles Morales was going to be named Miles Davis because his father's name is Jefferson Davis.
Yeah.
And apparently Marvel editorial was like, no, you can't do that. Like, you can't do that.
It's a little too far.
Yeah. I like Miles Davis. I have nothing against Miles Davis. He's awesome. He's one of the best jazz musicians of all time. That being said, what the fuck does he have to do with Spider-Man? What the fuck? Like, for some reason, black characters are only allowed to be named after like other black people in reality. Like, there's no amount of like fictitiousness that like black characters can have. They have to be like based on real life struggle and real life overcoming oppression. Because the spider that bites Miles Morales has the experiment number 42 on it, and most people assume that was a reference to I
saw the 42s in the movies, and I thought it was a Douglas Adams thing.
Most people assume it's a Douglas Adams reference because he's the multiverse Spider-Man, you know, and he's he goes on weird trippy adventures like a Douglas Adams book. It's actually based on Jackie Robinson's jersey number. Come the fuck on, man.
Yeah, someone on Twitter, I saw like was making an impassioned like thread about how important that is. I was like,
I want to remind you, no black people were involved in the making of this. Like no POC were even writing Miles comics until like 3 years ago. It was all white people.
It's this weird thing, and we saw it a lot after Trump got elected, just in general, where it's like a certain kind of white liberal, especially if they're like maybe a little older, have this weird totemic fetishistic relationship with black people, like as this like kind of like icon of something to them, something noble or beautiful or no. I already said noble. I don't know exactly how to describe it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it's like you go to make a character like this, and it's not just Like,
It's
oh, I wrote a Spider-Man
self-congratulating.
and he's black. It's like you're patting yourself on the back for doing the equivalent of what Jackie Robinson did in baseball by having a black Spider-Man in the
Yeah.
2010s.
And there's nothing controversial about it. There's arguably nothing that like was gained by black people by there being a black Spider-Man. Like it's fucking awful. But moving on, Miles debuts in 2011 to thunderous internet reviews and almost zero book sales. Because nobody fucking buys comics. And they certainly and this was like 3 years before they even pulled the fucking plug on the whole Ultimate Universe to begin with. And so Miles's original book lasts 25 issues, which is only 2 years. But a funny little thing happens. It's actually kind of almost like cosmic fate in a way, where friend of the show Amy Pascal fucked up and got her emails leaked. And in one of those emails, she says Spider-Man must always be white and always be straight and always be whatever the fuck. And this was right.
I know neither of you fucking listened to the podcast, but we did.
We talked about that on the Amazing Spider-Man episode.
Exactly.
That and Amy Pascal got in trouble for like sending emails about like, I think President Obama would really like the new Tyler Perry Medea movie, like shit like that.
Exactly. So she got caught having a heated white woman moment. And right about that time, Community was sort of reaching the end of its run, and at the same time as well, Sony announces that they're going to be working on a new Spider-Man movie. So on the internet, I want to state heavily on the internet and almost not at all in real life, people start championing for Donald Glover to play the new Spider-Man.
I kind of remember this.
Yes, I remember this.
Donald Glover was at the time like fucking I don't even know how old.
Yeah, he's already like
he's pushing 30 at this point.
Yes,
he's pushing 30.
I mean, not that stopped Andrew Garfield.
Not that stopped Andrew Garfield, but he always had like he never really had a youthful look about him. He always looked wise beyond his years. There was no fucking way he was ever going to be able to convincingly play a teenager. So obviously this did not happen. Although a couple years later, they did let Glover voice Miles Morales in a cameo in one of the Disney Spider-Man cartoons. So as like an attempt to placate people, but people were never going to be placated. You know, they needed that big screen African American Spider-Man. Now,
yeah, they needed.
Meanwhile, comics African American Spider-Man was still bombing. He had wound up on a team book, I believe called like the Bombshells or the New Ultimates or something like that. It was one of the last fucking books to ever come out of the Ultimate Universe. Canceled after like 8 issues, had some pretty art. No one fucking read it. But another Spider-Man thing came out in that year to sort of drive hype towards Spider-Man, and specifically Miles, who people just really felt at Marvel Editorial would be the next big thing. They released a I believe it was 3 issues maybe. Yeah. They released a crossover called Spider-Man, in which Peter Parker meets Miles Morales when he accidentally ends up in the Ultimate Universe. And the crossover is whatever. It's your normal, like, you know, fish out of water story. But at the end, Peter attempts to look up Miles. And they never show you what the actual Google search results are, but the look on Peter's face is not a good one. And
he stumbled across ends the book saying the fan fiction.
Yeah, he stumbled across the fan fiction, but he ends the book by saying like, oh my god. And there it was for a cliffhanger for almost 5 years. Later, in like 2017, they revealed that that if he didn't get the Spider-Man powers, he would end up in prison.
Of course,
working for the Kingpin. but it's heavily alleged, and I want to say this is parody, non-actionable. You can't sue me for this. It has been heavily rumored on the rumor mills that the story originally was going to end with like a news story that Miles had been killed in like a police shooting. There's been they've never confirmed this. It was 2013. It was right when all that shit was blowing up, and
that's Jesus Christ.
Not that making him a criminal was any better, but you could really, because especially because Bendis really needed that edge. You know, he really needed that comeback. You know, Ultimate Spider-Man had been very grounded in reality, or at least as much as you could for a Spider-Man issue. You know, they had a lot of things dealing with like, you know, very current issues. They had issues on like modern sexuality. They had issues on gun violence. It was very much like a things are happening book. So it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
Woke people.
Yeah,
that's the thing I kind of was trying to say earlier. Is it's like black characters can only exist as like iconographic representations of the discourse. They're never just people in their own right in this kind of writing.
Although, to be fair, he also did this with White Spider-Man. I think this is just how his brain works. But that being said, he shouldn't be able. Who let this man go? You know, like, you know, this is how his brain works. Don't give him the cool new black Spider-Man, because he won't make him very cool, and he'll come off almost kind of preachy. And that was sort of it for Miles. In 2016, they moved him into the mainstream universe after Secret Wars, because the Ultimate Universe done got blown up, and they moved him. They announced sort of almost immediately after that coming in some point, whenever this movie came out,
2018,
there would be an animated Black Spider-Man movie. And it would have the Lego Movie guys in it. But
so that's
I want to point out one thing.
But go on.
One half of them, exactly. Actually, the other one is listed as a producer. He had nothing to do
Miller,
with the script.
Phil Lord. I know them better. I never fucking watched the Lego Movie, but I fear we're going to have to watch the Lego movie at some point for this podcast. But like I watched like a bunch of Clone High when I moved into my like last apartment, because the talk about the revival was coming back, and I thought to watch it. It's genuinely really funny.
I believe it. Like, there are. I'm gonna say like the two things I liked about this movie, and then I'm gonna go back to
and then we gotta actually talk about the movie.
The two things that you can give the movie are, for the time, it is very pretty. Now, after it came out, every animator realized, oh, we can do that too. And every animated movie looks like this now. Every animated movie has the funny frame rate changes and all that shit. Nothing about this movie is special anymore. They decided to just double down in the sequel and not change or innovate whatsoever. They were just going to make more of the same. But the movie's pretty. It's fine. It looks good. I watched the 4K. It looked great on my TV. If I was stoned out of my mind, I was completely sober. But I bet if I was high out of my mind, I might have bumped it up a half star. The other thing that's good about this movie, there were like two jokes where I laughed.
Which ones?
There were
name them.
Fuck, dude, I can't remember. Actually, one of them was the end credit scene, just because it was funny to see the Bakshi the Bakshi led Spider-Man from the it was his first. He was like fucking like 19.
I see the fucking pointing thing now, and
I
it's
just
that part wasn't fun. That part wasn't funny. I just found that like there was a couple there was a couple gags around the fact that it's like 4 frames of animation per second.
Okay,
and that was funny.
That's literally the very last, like after the credits roll.
Yeah, and then
one of your two laughs.
The entire scene with Doc Ock was funny. I will admit that. They took a character that no one gave a shit about, which was the woman Doc Ock from the 1990s Ben Reilly Spider-Man comics, and they managed to make her pretty funny by turning her into like a new age yoga mom with weird like leather dom outfit kind of thing. There were a couple jokes in there that were good.
Into like chemistry, basically. So that she's like every Tumblr like lesbian's dream woman, and she's voiced by Catherine Hahn, who's like Natasha Lyonne, like an honorary lesbian.
I liked when they went into the cafeteria and they were like, "Oh, these guys are fucking nerds. Let's go jump out the window." And then all of these people have like space guns because they work at like the Hitler science place.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I found the movie generally pretty consistently amusing and competent. It just always felt like it was being written according to, like, written competently, but still written according to, here's what will sell, here's what will sell, here's what will sell. It never felt like anybody working on this was driven at the writing or story level was driven by their own impetus or interest. It's like purely, what do we think the audience will like, what will sell.
This is the first post Tom Holland Sony product, and you can really see that they are absolutely
Sony
desperate for any kind of identity. I think that's why this movie has,
and this was
like,
a miracle for them.
This movie has like 2% more artistry than your average cape shit blockbuster.
I wouldn't
solely
say 2%,
because of desperation.
but
I don't want to give Sony any credit. All of this was because they were like, "Fuck, dude, we don't have the Venom movie yet. We need a fucking hit. Marvel's kicking our ass right now." And admittedly, Feige did play some dirty pool by like fucking capitalizing on the Sony hacks to start like a conversation about Spider-Man.
Well,
in the
I remember
MCU.
they got the fandom really invested in the idea of bringing Spider-Man home, hence the titles of all these fucking Spider-Man movies.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
Once again, it's amazing how corporations have figured out how to make cults of themselves and their products and just rope people into,
because this is a marketing this is like a licensing negotiation, and they've managed to turn it into like, I don't know, like the Beatles getting their masters back or some shit. Like
the MCU Sardaukar will destroy Sony headquarters if they do not return Spider-Man.
well that, and at this point, like, I don't know, like, I think the only other sort of, I know there were a couple, like Sony Animation had like a couple things, like I know they did the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which I think was also a Lord Miller associated thing. I think
I've
it's
never
the same
seen it, but that
team
sounds
behind
right.
that. I didn't either.
I think so. That sounds right.
I mean,
it's got the same
this
kind
is
of humor.
2018. This is, post fucking Frozen. Like, this is, we're firmly in, like, we're not getting 2D animated shit from the big animation studios anymore. That's
actually
not happening.
That would be really funny if it was Lord and Miller doing the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movie, because the black cop in that is doing the same jokes as Miles' dad. Has any of you ever seen that movie? They have a black joke who, like, the whole pun is that, like, the whole joke is like similar to Miles' dad, where he's like big, scary, like jacked cop guy, but actually he's like a sensitive man. And
who
he
embarrasses
cries.
His son in public for no reason.
And embarrasses his family in public.
They did.
That was stupid. But anyways, what I was
Cloudy
saying...
with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, Meatballs 2, Lego Movie, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, what I was saying, like, not only did Sony need a hit, but I think definitely Sony Animation Studios needed something to, like, put them on par with, like, Pixar, DreamWorks, even fucking, I mean, Illumination was like eating their lunch with the fucking Minions shit, so this, like, this was a boon to everyone at Sony. Basically, it saved a sinking ship rather well.
Yeah, and it also proved that, like, because prior to this, outside of your Illumination films, you didn't really have animated films, except for every 4 years you would get a Pixar movie that would do like $1 billion that everyone would have to see. You had like your Pixar event movies, and then you had your Illumination films, which just did kind of okay.
And DreamWorks and...
Yeah, your DreamWorks would put out a movie every once in a while. This sort of proved that, like, animation could have competition, but the animation world responded to that by just making every movie look like this. Like,
I mean,
the new Puss in Boots movie is Puss in Boots Enter the Spider-Verse. Like, they even do the frame rate changes that this movie does to sort of distinguish between like good characters and bad characters.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was like really curious what Stu's reaction to this would be, because for the longest time, like I think maybe since like episode 1, you've been saying like a lot of these cape shit movies just might as well be animated. And
They should be, and I think this proves me right, like visually
yeah, this
speaking.
is on the better end of shit we get now, absolutely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I gave it a half star more than any of the other ones that we've seen. So
And it is nice to see animation techniques applied to stuff done in 3D on a computer, because they could have done that the whole time.
yes.
And they used to do it. If you look at really early CG stuff, they actually did it more then than you do now. But like, yeah, because CG stuff often has this like excess smoothness of motion. Nothing is
Like
snappy. Everything's just a
Teflon.
little floaty.
Yeah.
And it's like if you cut frames out, you can give it a snappiness to things.
Which is it's very funny that like God, dude, it sucks that like we had a movie that like sort of like peeked behind the curtain where it was like you could do anything with animation. And then literally they're just like, okay, so we can do this with animation.
Yeah, we can do the one thing we know sold.
Yeah. You could do so much with frame rate changes, with artificial rubber hosing, with all of the techniques that this movie does, or you could just
Different
even like
textures.
innovate and create your own techniques, you know, like
Yeah.
there's so much that this movie didn't do
rules.
that you could do.
That's
So to
why I
speak.
like I still have a fondness for something like Reboot or like early like video game CG cutscenes in some cases, because they kind of have the technology was so early that they did kind of like weird things to they're like, well, there's a lot we can't do, but there's this
Yeah.
handful of things we can do that you can't do any other way. And it had it was crude, but it had a distinct look and distinct qualities that they immediately abandoned as soon as they could do Shrek.
Exactly.
Just all of this potential to use exploit the unique qualities of your medium are abandoned in favor of just doing what's like very safe and conventional. And I think big budget Western animation needed like evidence that like, oh, audiences will watch something even slightly different. You can do that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I once
It was
again,
a shot
I'm
on the arm,
voicing-
but it didn't fix the root problem.
No, well, the
Yeah,
root
I-
problem
Yeah,
is
that like animation is just like sort of like a musical chairs of like one copying the, you know, it's like a fucking Xerox machine, you know.
yeah.
I mean, even the Bad Guys movie that they did was like it had that the same
furries
like
loved
animation
that.
style.
They
did actually.
loved it
It did so well at work.
so well with the furries, and I know because of someone I miss very dearly desperately wanted me to go see the Bad Guys with them, and I was like, I love you, but no. But like
they
just
put that Billie Eilish song in it.
I think they did.
yeah, but like I still have a lot of goodwill towards this movie because of its visual style. I mean, again, I'm once again voicing the girlfriend opinion here. I know that's my thing. And like I don't know. I do think it had something of a positive impact in terms of like actually giving some variety to like mainstream animated shit. So nothing ever like, now we get like something like this and it's not all like movies that just look like shiny minion asses and shit like that. Like
But now just everything looks like this.
but
and
now
it's not,
yeah,
it's
but
not
that's
special
also
anymore.
that's the
Yeah.
double-edged sword. But like
Yeah.
yeah,
Even the
revisiting
Mario
it,
movie kinda looks like
the old tried and true Stu adage about the cotton candy half-life of these things like rings true. I did not get as much enjoyment out of it. It is very much like I'm very aware of how it uses its like pretty visual style to kind of just attempt to distract you from being like as you clearly and very nicely explained, Nicole, just the stupid whiteness of Miles' story.
I haven't even touched on what they added for this movie because this movie.
Oh my god!
They weren't in there. Like they didn't have a lot to work with.
Should I attempt
Yes,
a
yeah.
brief summary of the movie's plot?
And-
Okay,
and
Do
so
that, and then
a
I will
summary?
peel back the curtain a little bit and talk about why this movie does what it does and
So
why
Miles
it's
Summary of this movie,
Morales
like
is
an hour into the episode.
well, we're getting to the movie now after doing so.
Yeah.
Miles Morales in the movie is an Afro Latino. His dad's a cop. His uncle is a cool guy. His mom seems nice enough. She's barely in the movie, and his dad rides him too hard because he's a gifted kid, and he goes to the gifted kid school. But he doesn't want to go to the gifted kid school. He wants to slack off and make graffiti because he's a cool urban youth. His cool uncle takes him down into an abandoned underground location to do graffiti, and then he gets bit by a magic spider that gives him Spider-Man powers, and he has no idea what's going on until a literal Spider-Man comic falls on his face, and he's like, "Oh, I have Spider-Man powers." Because we're doing the thing where Spider-Man as an IP exists in the universe of Spider-Man, so everybody can be Spider-Man fans in Spider-Man.
Your favorite trope.
My favorite trope. He meets the real Spider-Man, or like Peter Parker Spider-Man, who immediately dies trying to stop Kingpin from turning on a dimension machine. And the dimension machine causes a bunch of other Spider-Men to enter this universe. And so he strikes up a friendship mentorship with a schlubby divorced Spider-Man, and then he meets girl Spider-Man, cartoon Spider-Man, which is just the joke from Last Action Hero. And by cartoon Spider-Man, I mean he's like Porky Pig and
it's John Mulaney
noir
in his
Spider-Man.
It's John Mulvaney visibly on cocaine.
Like, oh yeah.
Now
and
visibly, and he's not even on camera. He's
anime
visibly
girl with a robot Spider-Man, which I
now
forgot about.
Now that you know how that like John Mulvaney used to just be a fucking drug fiend.
Wait, Cole, what is
hold on. Can we?
Sorry,
no,
we'll get to this after I.
Not John Mulvaney.
It's John Mulaney.
Fuck! God damn it! It is. There is who's Mulvaney? Dylan is Dylan.
Dylan, you're thinking of Dylan Mulvaney.
Who?
God damn it! I am.
You're on that Bud Light.
I'm not even on Twitter
bullshit.
that much anymore, and I still have this shit bleeding into my subconscious.
Anyways,
Miles Morales Spider-Man can't control his powers, which also inexplicably include electricity and invisibility. He struggles to learn how to be a Spider-Man. He gets a heartfelt lecture from his dad, discovers his uncle's actually working for the Kingpin. His uncle gets shot by the Kingpin. His dad thinks he, as Spider-Man, did it, but then immediately thinks otherwise by the end of the movie, so it doesn't matter. And then after getting a heartfelt lecture from his dad, he learns to control his powers perfectly and do everything right, and saves the day and sends all the other Spider-Men back home. Now he is the Spider-Man of this universe. But as the speech Mary Jane gives about dead old Spider-Man says, we're all Spider-Man, and there's a Spider-Man in all of us, and we've all got powers and heroes. And because of the multiverse, there's a Spider-Man for everybody to represent you, exactly you. Are you a bisexual, gender non-conforming Norwegian fucking fisherman? Well, there's a Spider-Man who is just like you out there somewhere in the multiverse, and you can buy his action figure and get mad at all the other action figures.
Yeah, there's a gay Spider-Man somewhere out there. What, like a gay ass, like cruising leather daddy Spider-Man somewhere out there.
He shoots the webbing out of his ass.
Out of his
and his
no,
dick.
he shoots out of his ass and dick.
Before I talk about the comic book stuff in this movie, I want to break Nicole's heart real quick.
Okay.
So the Asian girl Spider-Man is based
Penny
on a
Parker.
Penny Parker. I was kind of hoping you said that you would say that she was your favorite, so it would make it sting a little bit more.
On this watch, I didn't like her animations. It looked cheap.
It doesn't look right.
Committed to they should have gotten like Trigger or something to come and animate like an actual anime studio.
It's funny that you mentioned an actual anime studio. It's funny you mentioned Trigger, especially because do you know about the backstory about Penny Parker?
No, go off.
I like that I just want to mention before we go into that. It's spelled Peni.
Penny Parker.
So it's one letter off from penis.
Yeah, Penis Parker. Penis Parker.
So Penny Parker comes from the crossover that most of this movie takes from, which is Spider-Verse, and she comes from Edge of Spider-Verse, which was these one shots where they would visit other Spider-Man and sort of get a feel for them before they showed up in the crossover proper. And this issue was written by none other than My Chemical Romance's own Gerard Way.
Yay!
Oh, that's
And
so funny.
Hell
it's
yeah.
actually a really great issue. I really recommend it. It's got some fantastic art. But Gerard Way is a huge anime fan.
Yes.
And really just a fan of anything in pop culture. And so he wanted to do an anime Spider-Man. But Spider-Man, he's an angsty teenager.
Spider-Man
kind of has weird parental issues. He's science related. There's sort of this almost biblical angst about him. So he was trying to figure out, what anime should I base my Spider-Man comic on? And
Peter, you have to get in the robot or we'll make Gwen Stacy do it.
Actually, you're right.
I know. I mean,
You're right. No, yeah, you're right. The Penny Parker comic is literally just, what if Spider-Man was also Evangelion? In fact, the opening page features cameos from Asuka, Rei, and Shinji in the background.
Oh, wait, I've seen that screenshot. Yeah, I have. I've seen that screenshot.
And
okay.
Probably because they didn't want to get sued, they sort of redesigned the robot as more of a generic ball, kind of BB-8 looking thing on wheels. But there is a better version of this movie out there somewhere.
Yeah, the movie does allude to like the robot, the transforming robot that she has, having the spirit of her dad in it.
Yeah, and the spirit of her dad specifically living in a spider.
In the robot, yeah.
In the robot, yeah. The spider lives in the robot. Her dad lives in the spider. The spider, like,
of bullshit.
Yeah, it's actually really fun. I just read it before we came on. It's short. I don't think she ever actually got any other comics because really none of the other Spider-Verse characters that weren't already established Spider-Man did.
Because this movie does feel like a TV show that brings on a character to do a stealth pilot for their show. It feels like they're like, any one of these characters could catch on and we could merchandise them and give them a cheaply animated show or a streaming one-off or something.
Actually, outside of Penny Parker, all of the other Spider-Men that have speaking roles in this have been around for like twice as long as Miles.
Really? All of them?
Yeah. Spider-Man Noir first came out in like 2002.
Nick Cage is like Noir Spider-Man?
Yeah. No, there's a Spider-Man Noir miniseries. I think it was like 6 issues or something. That was just like, Marvel did like a noir line where they were like, what if their characters were noir? They sort of toned him down in this version because the noir Spider-Man's kind of brutal. He's like loosely based on the Shadow, except he's also Spider-Man. So he's this like poor labor activist that just gets like left for dead in like the weird like foreign part of New York City.
That sounds kind of rad, actually.
Yeah,
actually, it's a great 6-issue miniseries. It's too bad that they kind of toned it down a little bit in this.
I mean, Nick Cage is clearly having fun wearing like sunglasses and a leather jacket in a recording booth doing his
I've been reading Raymond Chandler recently, and I felt like very underwhelmed by the same thing with the Penny Parker, like the anime Spider-Man, is that they both felt like jokes being made about a genre by people that didn't actually know anything about the genre they're making jokes about. So they're just making jokes about they're making jokes about the stereotypes they already got from other parodies without any direct knowledge of the thing
especially
they're
Penny.
about.
And I feel like part of why Penny's like that is just like, we can't make her look like an Evangelion or we'll get sued. Because her robot looks exactly like, I mean, it's a little bit smaller because it's like person size. Like, I think it's only like 10 feet tall or something like that.
It fits in a living room. Yeah.
Yeah. It can swing because it has to web swing. But like it has the same like weird shoulders that it even has like it's actually kind of cool. It takes the panels of color that the Evangelion robots have, where they would have like stripes, and then it just sort of like, and like bands of the armor, and it just sort of applies Spider-Man's mask to that, where it's like, what would Spider-Man's mask look like if it was constructed into like EVA armor?
Okay.
Yeah, great comic. Read Edge of Spider-Verse. I think it's 5 or 6. I don't know. It's one of those. She's on the cover. You'll know which one it is. And yeah, Spider-Ham has been around since like the 70s.
That's
He's just
so
been like
silly. The fact that that's
Yeah,
real. That's
Marvel
such
used to do a
comic
lot of
bullshit.
they used to do like a lot of like Mad Magazine like
Yeah,
I
no,
think they
he's
called it.
clearly like a Mad magazine.
Yeah,
like,
they had
thing.
they had a magazine. I think it was called What the, and because they have What If, and then they had What the, and What the was like a joke version of What If,
Yeah.
and I think that's where Spider-Man or Spider-Ham first showed up.
What the fuck if Spider-Man were a pig? What the accent that was.
I think the only character that's newer than Miles is also the Spider, not Peter Spider-Man, that has the most screen time, which is Spider-Gwen. Miguel, can you insert like Scooby-Doo Thunderclouds into here? Because Spider-Gwen comes from a time in which comic books were basically like, fuck it, if it sells, we'll do it, which is sort of all of comics, but it was really bad in the 2013s, around the Tumblr year, the like eternal fucking second Obama administration. And Spider-Gwen, I think, was originally a variant cover for like a imagining what Gwen Stacy would look like as Spider-Woman. And the variant cover sold well and got a lot of buzz online. So they turned her into a character. Actually, both of the Spider-Man creators have now been accused of sexual misconduct. I wanted to point that out. Originally, it was just one, but I guess the other guy also did some sus shit at a con.
As per tradition.
As per tradition. And it really makes sense. Like, normally I'm like, separate the art from the artist, but so much of Spider-Gwen, especially in this movie and in the comics, feels like it's the Ramona Flowers ification of Spider-Man. It's like, it's that kind of like simpering yet transgressive sexuality where you want the girl to be dominated, but you're gonna push her to dominate you. You're wanting to.
Yeah,
it's the kind of, yeah.
I do like her visual design.
She's the cool. It's the snarky cool girl who's so above you, and then because she's so above you, you want to have her, but then it's also the fact that she's above you is what you get off on. So it's like,
and then it turns out she's trans.
Liberal version. It's the liberal version of being an incel. It's the like if you're that kind of guy, you have two choices. You can become an incel, or you can become like a male feminist type that just like does a Joss Whedon. There's so much Joss Whedon energy.
It is the Joss Whedon trip, which is like the woman who can kick your ass, and you like simultaneously want to dominate and be dominated by her.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
so you create her within your own fictional context. You can sort of play God with her.
Yeah,
it's a weird.
And she's even like in a band, which is like she's in like a Riot Girl punk band.
Of course.
And she plays ballet. Like, she's just perfect. She's effortless. When she's introduced, this sort of like seeps into the movie where when she's like introduced, she's like the only one that has her shit together.
She's just awesome all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of. And again, like that's another thing that like it sounds like a right-wing talking point, but it's like right-wingers hang on to that talking point because there is some truth to it.
This is our most right-wing episode ever.
They're also fronting for their reactionary cultural grievance, but they're not.
They're coming to the wrong conclusion. Yeah.
Or I think people, they observe that, and then they get told that they're sexist for recognizing it, and then that pushes them.
I think most of them were already sexist.
Probably,
yeah. But definitely, it's sort of like like how more respected Ditko for realizing that the current system of capitalism wasn't right, but he came to the conclusion that Randianism was the correct way. It's like you realize something is wrong, but your methodology for fixing that is just completely flawed and arguably would lead to a worse outcome than what already exists. And that's sort of what the core of like right-wing counter fandom is, because a lot of times those guys do tend to win. They're winning right now with Star Wars, where every show is Boba Fett being cool, and
Yeah.
they're almost kind of winning now in comics, where it's like fucking like, you know, every single movie with a black woman in it bombs because they do stunt casting, and then like every movie that's like, you know, what if the Punisher was actually right the whole time, you know, does like gets picked up at Netflix or whatever. And
I think
yeah,
that's just Hollywood flailing to try and find the secret sauce. So once their one paradigm kind of runs out of juice, like, oh, what's the next thing?
exactly.
But they're looking at, there's this misconception, I think, with all these people that social media is representative of the real world, that like if 100,000 people on Twitter or Tumblr want something, they represent like a proportional sample of like 100 million people who want it. And that's not true. It's the 100,000 people who care one way or the other about that are the entire 100,000 people that are on the internet talking about it.
I'm not, I if I change even one person's mind about Miles Morales being a good character, I will succeed, especially this version, because my God, you can tell that like that the Fantano style white boy was all over the shit.
So
2 minutes into the movie, they're blasting the Notorious B.I.G.
Oh, that was so bad.
It's either like 90s rap that like Gen X guys think is
or
still the coolest thing, or it's, I don't know, whatever
soft
is
boy rap. Yeah, it's
the rap that my little sister listens to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the soft boy Urban Outfitters, like you know.
No, that shit's like what you're listening to in like a waiting room.
Yeah, dude, Juice World is on the soundtrack. XXX Tentacion is on the soundtrack. This is all stuff that this is all stuff that I listen to. Sway Lee, Jaden Smith is on the soundtrack. This is stuff that you listen to during like the 2017, 2018 like Brockhampton summer, where the only way that you could get like pussy from someone with a septum ring was by like dressing like a skater, but then also getting a septum ring and dyeing your hair to prove that you were like, you know, a non-toxic man. When in reality, all of these people were the same toxic men that they were when before all this happened. It's just peacocking, you know. It's just
it's all affectation.
The needle drops in this feel like just like it's like an Imagine Dragons song, like needle drop on like that level.
This is Obama's Spotify playlist.
No, this is worse, where it's like it's trying to it's like if this was Imagine Dragons, it's like, okay, you want like the people that unironically get excited to work like corporate work radio at their like big box store job. Those are Imagine Dragons fans. These are like, I'm trying to explain. Like I feel like this is the only time when my generation gap feels like it's actually coming into play here. It's like you know, soft boy shit. It's like like remember when everyone was going crazy over Pete Davidson as like the sexiest guy ever because he had like
really
weird.
He looked like
I remember that. I don't understand it, but I remember it.
Sexiest guy alive, him?
Nicole, where have you been?
This coked out white boy?
He fucked Kim Kardashian.
I know, but I don't remember an online campaign of
do you remember like the big dick energy thing where it's like if you look like you stink and you skate, that was the last dying gasp of that. But like it all started in like kind of like art rap, kind of, you know, your Flower Boy, like Tyler the Creator era, that kind of, and that's who this movie is for. It's for people that don't skate, but they're like 2 degrees separated from someone that does, you know. It's literally me when I was 17 and like trying desperately to fit in, and then realizing that like nobody cares. The scene is going to dry up in 2 weeks. Like, you know, nobody's going to be hanging out at dead malls anymore. Like, ironically, you know, it's almost the Gen Z version of like mall rat, like slacker culture. You know, it's a very similar thing where it's like it's over committing to a style of like of both looking different than everyone else, but also like, you know, you're dyeing your hair.
It's a bold and
peacocking
innovative.
by minimum effort. You know, it's like, okay, I'm gonna dye my hair. I'll wear the, you know, the Thrasher hoodie. I'll listen to, you know, a band from Portland called like Non-Binary Girlfriend. Actually, I listened to a band from Portland called Non-Binary Girlfriend, and they were very good, actually.
Monster, don't know who I am when I sleep at night. Right around the world, could have seen some pretty girls.
Shout out Non-Binary Girlfriend. They are the new. They listen to Non-Binary Girlfriend instead of watching this movie.
It's amazing what a difference less than a decade makes in like your youth experience.
I know. Actually, I first listened to them at friend of the show Jim's house. Shout out to Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Shout out to Jim.
Hi, Jim.
He was listening to Non-Binary Girlfriend. He had the radio on, and they were playing Non-Binary Girlfriend.
How the hell are they on the radio?
They were on. It was a Seattle like college rock station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's it's the Gen Z version of college rock. That's who this movie is for. It's like Tyler the Creator and like Brockhampton and like Young Fathers and all these like you know non-binary rapper type people. It's college rock. But in the same way that college rock was for 17-year-olds, it wasn't for college students, you know, it was for people in high school.
Yeah.
You listened to college rock because you thought that's what like that being an adult was being like disaffected and ironic and like, you know, documenting the death of society and not being an adult means having a shitty job that made you want to kill yourself every day.
Well, you know what and I've been thinking about this a lot within the last like 24 hours since I rewatched it, but the other sort of main audience that I think really hyped this up and is currently really hyped up about new one.
This movie feels like it's. No, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to get a thought in while I had it.
Okay,
That's
yes,
interrupting.
sure. And interrupt me
That is
again.
interrupting.
It's Jim's favorite thing that you do to me. Jim's not going to appreciate that.
He's gonna get one.
He's gonna get mad at you. Jim's gonna yell at you.
Yes, I'm gonna put him on Discord. I'm gonna get him on Discord and just sneak invite him to a watch at some point. I'm gonna sneak invite him to Discord, and then he's gonna join in on a watch and just chew you the fuck out and feed you to the dogs.
All right. What do you want to mansplain to me about?
No, I just want to say I feel like that the real audience for this movie, like the people who made it, is like suburban white people who want to feel cool and culturally hip and even like maybe culturally progressive by proxy.
Yeah, and that overlaps with what I was going to say,
especially sorry. Now I'm doing it.
Now you're doing it. Well,
but especially with how like the other big change they do to Miles is he's constantly wearing Air Jordans in the Spider-Man thing, which is like, why? Why is he wearing Air Jordans and a hoodie in the Spider-Man costume? You know, it wasn't like Peter was wearing like a leather jacket and like a rockabilly wig or something, you know, when he was being Spider-Man.
It's like if they made me into Spider-Man and they dressed me in a kilt because like my great-grandparents were Scottish.
They have to signify in a way that you can just immediately grasp this is the black one. You know, even his logo looks like a basketball.
Yeah,
it's
spray paints.
I didn't notice that.
His,
That's really
he
funny.
He spray paints his suit. By the way, if we get to 100 patrons, Stu will wear a kilt.
No, I won't.
Yes, you will.
We'll turn Stu into Irish.
Okay, sorry. Make your point.
Make my point.
Yeah, make your point.
We're skirting around. The other big audience for this movie, and the one that has done the most like free marketing for it, is the Tumblr sort of fandom brained, like, you know, we want diversity, we want to see ourselves in media crew. Like, so much of this movie and its humor, like from the get-go, especially, like it clicked for me the moment Peter B. Parker does like the Spider-Man 3 dance, because Spider-Man 3 was such a meme on Tumblr. And like so much of the humor and like the tonal beats and like hell, the visual style of it feels very like marketed towards that demographic, if not like intentionally. It certainly has all the things that are like catnip to them. And like it's something I want to just play with a little bit is how like horny people got over the characters and the adult characters in this movie. Like
Incredible
Femdoc Ock,
phrasing that you want to play with that.
sorry, Femdoc Ock being like voiced by Catherine Hahn, who's like honorary lesbian, like Natasha Lyonne. I don't know if she's actually lesbian or whatever, but like she tends to play a lot of like lesbian coded roles. And also like Femdoc Ock just looks like science teacher Miss Frizzle. And Miss Frizzle, I think
she was
is like
my favorite character.
Yeah, she's cool. But more than anything, it's Peter B. Parker who is he's literally Tumblr sexy manified. Like, what if Peter Parker was an out of shape, pathetic divorce slob with a dad bod who also loves to eat burger and pizza? Like that one shot of him like deep throating the burger and like sucking on his fingers ruined seats at like AMC theaters around the globe. Like there was so much lewd like fan art, and like because this came out in like the waning days of my Tumblr career. So I remember the influx of fan art because he checks off all the Tumblr sexy man boxes, and I get it. He's like basically another version of like my go-to favorite Tumblr sexy man character, Reagan Arataka from Mob Psycho 100, just like a pathetic slob. And
which is funny because
that girls love that.
So much of Peter B. Parker, at least to me, outside of like the deliberate like commentary on Spider-Man that they're kind of doing here, he felt like Ross from Friends.
A little bit. I mean, sort of pathetic in a similar way when it comes to his relationship.
Yeah, they're both pathetic. They're both divorced. They're both fucking like, you know, kind of schlubs that like on paper should be off doing some like incredibly important shit, but like because they can't get over their own personality disorders, they're just trapped in like this ineptitude cycle. Which really says a lot about the movie if you think about it. You know, this whole movie is an ineptitude cycle.
We want to have our mediocre white man jokes, but we need a different Peter Parker to do them with because we can't sully canonical Peter Parker.
This is the sissification
None
of the
these
Western
are canonical
male.
Peter Parker.
Or well, we need an extra canonical Peter Parker so we can do our mediocre white man jokes without tarnishing the brand of Spider-Man writ large.
I think because the main Peter Parker in this is blonde, which is something that Peter Parker never was, and it could very well possibly be that they're setting up that like, and this would be very funny if they do. I would do a complete 180 on this movie. The only blonde person that's ever been Spider-Man is the clone of Peter Parker, and if they set up that like actually they're in the middle of the clone saga. That would be awesome, but I don't think this movie has actually gives a shit about comics.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. Are you playing Spider-Verse at work yet, or is that not...
next week?
Okay, so you haven't seen it, or you won't.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, but I mean, I think spoilers are pretty out there and ready by now. Like it's been a weekend and it's already like
they have Ben Reilly in the new one, right?
I already forgot what the spoilers were.
Gwen is trans now.
Well, there's that, but they have Ben Reilly in the new one. They have the Scarlet Spider, the clone spider in, and from what I understand, he's like a '90s or were edgy punchline, which is weird because he wasn't really that edgy. He was it's. I saw people complaining about this online. It's like the only like actual complaint I've seen about the movie was that they kind of disrespected the Clone Saga, which is weird. It's weird that this movie managed to piss off people in the direction of the Clone Saga. That's like what your dad thinks is the worst Spider-Man crossover, you know? It's not. It's fine. It's perfect, especially compared to Spider-Verse. The comic, I mean, the movie's nowhere. At least the movie's villain is like the Kingpin and not like weird like multiversal vampires that feed on Spider-Man energy. And the entire crossover comic is just page after page of like, hey, remember the Spider-Man cartoon you liked as a kid? What if Mortal Kombat fatalities were happening to him? Like it's
What?
it's
What if he gets his
heartlessly
heart ripped
cruel.
out?
Literally, they murder the Spider-Man and his amazing friend Spider-Man and like kill the Aunt May of that universe and like eat her dog. It's like it's needlessly cruel. It
Also,
is
here's
needlessly cruel.
the Aunt May in this iteration, she's like Alfred.
Kind
Yeah,
of.
she's
Yeah,
based
she is.
on
that?
She is
she's based
Alfred.
on the ultimate version of Aunt May, who knows that she finds out that Peter is Spider-Man like pretty halfway through, and she's like, Peter's like, oh, are you worried, you know? And she's like, no, and then goes out and like buys a gun the next day, and she's just like packing heat and shit throughout the entire thing. It's
I
a more
thought it was
realistic form of Aunt May.
really weird that he had a bat, that the dead Spider-Man in this has a bat cave under his shed.
Yeah,
Like where
that's
did you get the
also a
money for that? You're
reference.
not Bruce Wayne.
That's also a reference to the Ultimate Comics where he's routinely helped out by Shield because Nick Fury was kind of grooming Peter into being the next Captain America,
Oh.
where they needed a superhero that they could control and they could theoretically like beat the shit out of any regular person and also like sort of be like liked by the people. And so Nick Fury like will routinely come up and be like, hey, we need you to do this top secret mission for us, kind of like the MCU movies. Although it is more of, I think, at least I don't know Bendis's politics. I think it's a commentary on sort of the predatory nature of the military. I don't know. I have no idea. But
so you're saying in the comics Shield built it for him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought like
his house is all tricked the fuck out in that. I mean, he's got Carnage living in his house. Like,
oh, weird. Okay, yeah, I just a nitpick. I just thought it was like weird for this working class college kid to have all this shit.
Yeah, no, because Carnage is Gwen Stacy in this version.
That's insane.
So, I guess the thing I wanted to address is the concept of a Spider-Verse and a multiverse, which we've talked about a little bit before. I think and I feel like were multiverses introduced into comics just so they could just do different versions of characters and get around like canon bullshit?
Actually, no. I mean, yes and no. The first multiverse in comics that we really know about comes from DC, and originally it was a way to explain to explain canon and hand wave away the fact that characters stories would be like set in a period of time where they had Earth 1 and Earth 2, and Earth 1 was like where all of the comics happened, but then Earth 2 was where all the comics from World War II and before happened. So all the World War II and before versions of those characters would actually get continuations. In fact, there was this guy, Roy Thomas, who was a huge World War II and sort of history autist, who sort of took it on himself to do that for DC. Like he would just do stories about like what are the DC World War II superheroes getting up to, and eventually, once the 80s rolled around, you had like 40 years of stories for both versions, where like now like Batman had since passed on. like Dick Grayson was starting to gray hair. He had kids. Like Batman's grandkids were running around, and they were like, DC was like, this is too much, man. So they did the very first comics crossover, and Marv Wolfman said, okay, no more multiverse. We got rid of it. And that was sort of how DC was for a while. Marvel has had a multiverse since I think the 80s or the 70s. Actually, it might have been Alan Moore, I think, who introduced the multiverse for them. And I think
Alan,
it was in
what
an
have you done?
issue of Captain Marvel. Or not Captain Marvel, Captain Britain. Over at Marvel UK.
Yeah.
He's sick.
Yeah, it's Peggy in the MCU.
No,
I know.
No,
They
dude, Captain
made her
Britain
Peggy.
is so cool in the MCU because he has nothing, or in the comics, because he has nothing to do with Captain America. It's just like this random ass white boy that like Merlin pulls up on this British lord's fail son who's like trying to kill himself in the swamp and is like you are
Traumatized
loosely
from all that public school buggery.
pretty much, actually. Yeah, he's just like there's like no place for him in the world, and he's like, this fucking sucks, man. Like, why couldn't I just be like a regular rich guy? And Merlin pulls up on him and is like, you have like noble blood, pick the sword or the shield. And he picks the shield and gets this cool costume. He doesn't actually have a shield. It's a metaphor where he's the defender of Britain. He's not the offender of Britain. You know, he's not the conqueror. He just defends the Commonwealth. And he's like, and then later, like as an aside, Merlin's like, oh yeah, if you picked the sword, I would have just fucking killed you. Like,
okay.
He's like, yeah, like actually, Psylocke from the X-Men is her sister, his sister. She's also currently Captain Britain now, and Britain in the Marvel universe is like a nexus of realities where, like, because Merlin and his boys fucked around with magic so much, like the walls of reality are kind of thin. The pussy of reality is kind of loose, and so they have to fuck shit up. Yeah, they hit the back walls too many times, and so now like occasionally like just some fucked up evil shit from like the other end of the multiverse will show up. It was genuinely used for interesting storytelling for most of comics.
See, because I know in film the whole point of the multiverse is it's just more intellectual property and endless variations on intellectual property. It's like, because it used to be, it's like, well, we got Spider-Man, but we've done 3 Spider-Man movies. The last one was a bit of a mess. We'll just reboot it anyway. Now it's like, well, now we can reboot, but also sequel, but also keep canon and shit. We can do whatever we want to do.
That's kind of how it was in comics, but it was handled a little bit more deftly, where it's like, if you're an old head, you can read these. If you're a new head, you can follow these, and you don't have to read as much, but you can still read the old head stuff if you want to, because it's like it won't necessarily affect things, but you'll still have background for the characters. At least that's how it was for DC. For Marvel, It was always more of like, this is how we can do a story without fucking around with the main timeline, But
now
like
it seems like the Spider-Verse exists so that Sony can use Sony can use Spider-Man that aren't the Spider-Man that Disney
and the whole
Spider-Verse
is a very recent concept. The crossover was in, I think, 2009 or something like that. Or like 2011. I don't know. It was super recent. It was around the same time as Miles being introduced, and it was Dan Slott, who is I think he's the longest running Spider-Man writer, and also he's been writing Spider-Man pretty consistently since One More Day. Since the aftermath of One More Day specifically, but his shit sucks ass, dude. His shit's so bad.
Or like Dan Slut.
Yeah, he'll also block you on Twitter really quickly if you say anything disparaging about him, because he has thin feelings. But he stayed on for Spider-Man for like 15 years just to say that he could. Like, he fucking sucks, man. And he did the Spider-Verse crossover. There's like 8 of them now, but like, yeah, they always sucked. They were just like, the first one was really cruel, and the second one was just like, we need to introduce new characters for you to be excited about because they might show up in a movie one day. And then like that's all it's ever been. It's never been interesting. In fact, even though there have been other Spider-Man, you know, there was the Ultimate Spider-Man as far back as 1999. There was Spider-Man 2099, who was, I think, as far back as like 1991. And
Okay, so
Spider-Man 2099 rocks cock, by the way. It's
yeah,
so cool.
he's
It is
the last. He's like the end credit scene after you sit through
Yeah,
all
he's
those
in the
like
end credit
10
scene of
minutes
this
of
one.
credits.
But yeah, he's so cool. He like in my Spider-Man read through, I actually like I added it in after because it's just such a fresh, refreshing take on the character. Shout out Peter David, by the way, for he fucking fuck the sequel, by the way, because Peter David's currently laid up in hospital bills at fucking like thousands of dollars in debt because he had a heart failure and had to get like a heart transplant or some shit. And the Chris Lloyd, whatever the Lego Movie guy was, like didn't even donate anything. He just like retweeted the GoFundMe.
And
There's not even a
doing
thank
all
you to
these
him in
fucking
the
movies.
credits.
You've got to be.
Yeah,
This movie is on track.
Like, you could
This movie's on
stand
track
that
to do
guy
Mario
right on
numbers,
medical
the
debt.
sequel specifically. And I'm sorry, but if he does not get a fat check off this, because a lot of times the royalty checks are only like $1,500.
Yeah,
Like,
shit.
the guy who created Thanos, I don't know. Do you remember the Russian mobster in Batman versus Superman?
There was a Russian mobster in Batman.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Snyder gave him the name of a random glup shitto ass Batman character from the 80s, and Jim Starlin received more money from that than he did from Thanos showing up in Infinity War.
that is
ridiculous. Disgusting.
What the?
Yeah. I think he said he got like $500 for Thanos showing up.
I don't understand what's stopping
I almost
Disney
did a spit take right there.
Like, I feel like you could get so much good PR
because
from just beefing up their royalty checks even a little bit.
They don't want to open themselves to the smallest of lawsuits.
$500.
That is all that it comes down.
It's a Pandora's box, I guess.
Exactly.
$500 for like a $1 trillion franchise.
If you say that like these characters deserve money, then you are implying that like they weren't contract work, that they were actually like creative work, because that's what comic books are, contract work. Most people for most of comics didn't actually get royalties at all for their characters, because it was like, no, you're a contract laborer, you did a job, we paid you, we don't owe you anything extra.
It's uber art.
Exactly. And actually, Blade was the first movie to really break with that, where Marv Wolfman sued Marvel, and Marvel did some, like, they had some royalty program, but they haven't like updated the actual like amount of money that you get since the 90s, so it's a fucking pittance now. It's like $1,300 or some shit like that. You know, it's like it was good money, because it's like, oh yeah, this shitty action movie that will make maybe $100 million at the box office comes out, and I get like an extra paycheck out of it, you know. And now it's like, there's a movie coming out that is going to make more money than God, and you will see, like, you will maybe be able to buy the new iPhone with the amount of money that you get from creating the character. I mean, the guy who created Rocket Raccoon is laid up right now.
Yeah.
He's fully paralyzed from the neck down after a freak hit and run accident in the 80s. And they didn't even give him any money until like after the second one came out.
It's a fucking terrible industry, man. It's appalling.
And like, he's on full life support. Like his brother would like routinely just make videos of himself like crying, because he's like, yeah, dude, I either have to like mortgage my house or kill my brother. And finally James Gunn like coughed up a little bit of money out of his own pocket that he got for Guardians, because it's like, you're not going to be able to keep the lights on for that money, even though he created the fucking characters, man. It's ridiculous. So yeah, don't go see Spider-Verse 2 until they give Peter David a shitload of money. Pirate that shit, sneak into the theater. If you need to know how to sneak into a theater, I got you. The fire escape.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Fire escape.
I've
like,
heard a couple
go to the
people who
bathroom.
managed to even sneak into like the pre-premieres of Spider-Verse 2. Just you can
Yeah.
do it.
Just act like you belong. That's really
Literally,
the key
that's
to
how
it.
they
secret
did
to
it. They
sneaking
acted
in
like they
anywhere.
belonged.
That
Yeah.
like you can
Don't go see this.
amazing things
Read
by just being
Spider-Man
confident.
2099 though. It rocks cock. It's like what if it's like Cyberpunk Spider-Man. It's awesome. He
Speaking
gets
of
his powers
which,
because he's a drug addict.
Miguel O'Hara, that's his like human identity.
his
He's
name,
like
yeah.
trending on Twitter, and I've already seen like 3 or 4 like fan arts of like him fucking Peter B. Parker up the ass.
Honestly, if it gets more people into Marvel 2099 and specifically like the original volume of Spider-Man 2099, I'll be happy about it. I'm not gonna hold my breath because like, I mean, Miles Morales' longest comic book run is 42 issues, and he's been in multiple like multi-million dollar franchises, and they can still barely get his comics to sell. And those are bad comics. If they can't get the bad shit, the synergy shit to sell, then I don't think that the the Miguel O'Hara books will sell. But read them. That's my watch something else for this movie. Miguel O'Hara rocks. He's the best Spider-Man that isn't directly related to Peter Parker. Yeah, that's good shit. He gets his power. He has like an AI hologram that's like a knockoff of Marilyn Monroe that like
he's got his own joy.
So like,
yeah, no, literally.
What I would like to see from people is, instead of getting pissy and doing hashtag campaigns or whatever over just something as inane as just, oh, you want a version of Spider-Man that is just like superficially more like you, why not use whatever leverage is actually there in terms of like consumer advocacy, boycotts, publicity campaigns to get companies to do something that actually matters and makes the world better, like fucking treat creators and workers fucking better, right?
Yeah, no, get Peter David a bag 2023, dude. Fucking fucking free him. Free him, dude. He deserves the bag.
More than a special thanks in the credits. Give him a good hefty
he didn't even get a special thanks in the credits for the first movie because he's the end credits guy. Even though it's like he wrote Spider-Man too. He wrote regular Spider-Man. I mean, not a very good regular Spider-Man, but like, come on,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the fucked up thing about Brian Michael Bendis is he's so good at getting a bag for his dog shit, dude. He is loaded, and all of his shit gets adaptations because it captures that Joss Whedon magic that producers love, where it's like, oh, you know how to speak to teenagers. In reality, he doesn't, and they always fucking bomb. But he has enough of a track record with like the Jessica Jones show and like Spider-Verse that he can basically write his own ticket.
I wonder
forever.
if this is because, like I think he is friends with, or was friends with Joss Whedon in real life, because there's a character with his name on Firefly in one episode.
Is there fucking really? I don't know about him personally. It wouldn't surprise me.
But I feel like situations like that, it's a matter of like having the right friends and connections keeping you sort of in the game. And I also I've been thinking, because Nicole, you mentioned how much seeming Tumblr bait there is in this movie. And to what extent is it pandering? It just seems weird to pander to Tumblr for such a
they're not that
movie.
Obviously they're not a big demographic.
But I wonder,
they make great hype men.
But I wonder, they
fans
do.
are doing the marketing for these movies at this point. Like, I think someone noticed like all the Flash like posters are just like using quote like reaction
Tumblr
quotes attributed
quotes
to like some stan on like Twitter.
Or Twitter, I meant to say,
if you see a movie that has that, it's cooked. It's fucking done. It's gonna be hot ass.
I wonder how much of this is a result of a lot of like people involved with these productions, maybe not always at the topmost level sometimes, but then also just like down the chain, are also just all on Tumblr or Twitter, and they're in these like cultural spheres and little bubbles. And so they are shaped by or responding to this stuff
You know what it also
you see,
might
there's
be?
like Neil Gaiman's all over Twitter, guys like that. Like
I know a
there's
couple of
certain...
the people who work directly, like supervising the animation on Spider-Verse, are like Twitter. I feel like Tumblr expatriates.
Yeah,
So yes,
Yeah.
that is. I think that is even
You know
a
what it also
better
might be
way of putting
is
my point.
producers looking at the rampant success that I hate this word. I'm going to say a word that I hate. The queer baiting of Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan in
Miguel,
Marvel.
make sure you put a reverb on that.
queers do be baiting.
It's like that shit. Like just
we talked about it.
Just making Chris Evans do a couple like fawning glances and like have like regular male friendship with Sebastian Stan, basically like it's spontaneously generated $1 billion for the MCU.
It is like, yeah, it's all you need, and it's all you need to do. Just the vaguest subtext will make people, or will make people freak out, while the rest of the audience won't even know. I think it's the same thing with the new one, and they're like, oh, the Spider-Gwen's got a protect trans kids flag. It's like either it's something like that, or it's just they put it in there because she's a Zoomer and they think that's just what all Zoomers are like, or it's like a background artist slipped it in there because they're like a progressive person and or something. That's my
If it was that, shout out to the background artist.
Or they're trans themselves. There are a lot of trans animators out there.
Oh yeah.
If it was that, shout out to the background artist. If it was anyone that makes more than $1 million a year, we will be throwing.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
So do we have any other concluding thoughts or points we didn't get to with this?
Let me check the notes.
Let me take a look at Miles Morales show notes in our I can't say the name of the folder you put this in, Cole.
You both. Oh,
actually, let me check my Letterboxd review. I might have.
Yeah, Stu, you wrote a whole ass fucking essay.
Yeah.
For your review.
I also did.
Stu wrote like 10 paragraphs.
Jesus Christ.
Because Stu went off.
Sometimes I get rolling. I don't want to say, like, I would like this movie a lot more if it just didn't have all of these so blatantly commercial elements. Like, it wouldn't take that much to make me feel warmer towards this movie. It just kept losing me because I could just see the math behind every decision.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I have a fun 5-minute segment we could do.
Okay, yeah.
Let's play a game.
Hello. You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.
My name is Christian Chandler. I live in Bucksville, Virginia. I have a PSP. I like to rap. I play with the rapper. I go with you now. The only song I know is Master Onion, which I got from a demo I bought from my friend Megan.
Let's play a game. We're gonna look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 criteria for a white ass black character in the letter, and we're gonna see if this applies to Spider-Verse Miles. With one caveat, since this letter was written 30 years ago, I'm going to bump up the circa 1974 clothing to circa 1999. You know, circa the 90s. Yeah, something that was like a little bit over 20 years ago today. So would you both say, so I personally, I'm going to raise my hand for this one, but would you both say that Miles Morales exhibits the trait in this movie of circa 1994 clothing and hairstyle?
You know what? The thing that comes to mind, like, he has the like sudden growth spurt, so his like pants are like too short. And I feel like that was kind of like a trend in the 90s where guys just wore like tiny pants.
Oh like, yeah, no, that was a very like that was a very like 2002 like Jack White kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean like just straight leg pants, but I mean like pants that were too short that like, you know,
and they were
like above their ankles. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
even like, I don't know, 2004. I'm not very fashion conscious, so these things kind of go over my head unless they're really exaggerated.
There's an easy one for you. He literally has the Kid and Play haircut, and admittedly, this style was popular around that time. But he had it. He he had the kid and play haircut, bizarre
does have the
speech
hoodie.
patterns, unrecognizable by any member of any culture on the planet. Nicole and
I
Stu,
wouldn't
do
say
you
no.
think that maybe some of the slang in this movie might be a little bit dated?
Well, I understood all of it, so I'm going to say yes.
I'm gonna say no, because that wasn't what I was like focusing my criticism. Like I was more kind of hung up on like I asked this to you, like, does Miles get bit by a graffiti spider while doing graffiti in a subway tunnel with his like Andre Steakhouse uncle? And
he's in his uncle's apartment, I think, playing video games.
Okay, so
In
no.
the comics. So no.
So I was focused on that. So I will say
smart
no.
white friend to help them out of the trouble they get into. There's like 8 of these characters in the fucking
Yeah, well, I mean
movie.
that's kind of like Spider-Gwen's whole purpose. Although he does have his roommate
and also
who's
Peter
barely in the
a
movie.
little bit.
Yeah.
When he's teaching him how to web swing.
Although he's not smarter, he's just the older mentor figure that kind of most of these types of stories have.
Would you say that these characters were designed to feel sort of everyman? This character was designed to feel sort of everyman-esque, but only if you were black.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's wearing fucking Air Jordans. He's going to the bodega.
Yeah, he's got the Air Jordans on, the basketball shorts.
It's like it's not just that he's black; it's that he's capital B black with a trademark next to it, right? Like,
yeah,
he's
token.
He's
corny. Yeah,
he's a character from Boys in the Hood. He's like the smart guy. He's the Cuba Gooding Jr. character from Boys in the Hood.
He should have been the Cuba Gooding Jr. character from Radio.
That would be awesome. He's not on a skateboard, so that's one that we don't have.
Yeah, but skateboarding's hasn't been.
That's not cool. Yeah,
associated with black people for a long time.
He does the 2020s version or the 2018s version of that, where he's like really into pickup games of basketball and street graffiti.
Yeah. Which
my
feels
cat
dated in the
pissed on my fucking
2018s.
curtains, dude.
That feels like such a 2004 thing to me. Like
Snoopy,
the graffiti.
cut that shit out, man.
Wait, you
My
still
cat
haven't
just
posted
pissed
any
all
of
over
the
the
kittens in the pets server. I'm mad at you.
This is my adult cat. I have 3 cats.
Well, you don't post enough of them. But anyways,
it's because the big one pisses all over my curtains every day. I'll get them clean. 2 days later, they're just letting the curtains.
You know what you do when
He's
they
staring
do that,
me dead in the face.
You piss on the curtain higher than they can piss.
Mark your territory.
I'm not pissing on my. I actually have very nice curtains. I like my curtains. They're like.
They're not going to be nice for long if the cat keeps pissing on them.
I'm going to take them right into the wash. They won't even have time to dry by the time this is over. Anyways, last but certainly not least on our list, they have an attractive white female friend to calm them down when they get too excited.
Well, yeah, again, that's the whole point of Spider-Gwen.
Literally, there is a recurring scene in this movie where Miles is having a realistic panic attack, but Spider-Manified, and because she's Spider White Woman and she's got a level head, she's like, you gotta breathe, and then he breathes. But the real thing that helps him overcome his spider anxiety is humming rap music.
Yeah, God, yeah.
Yeah, humming lo-fi hip-hop beats to study and relax to is what makes him relax.
Did you also notice the thing with Spider? Well, did I mention this before we were recording there? How he gets Spider fingers stuck to her hair.
Yeah, we talked about
that. Perfect undercut.
You give her the cool Zoomer girl undercut.
Yeah, we spent like 5
minutes.
To
be fair, she probably had to touch that out. When you get something stuck in your hair, an undercut is like the goat haircut to save that.
Yeah, but it's a contrivance so they could give her that haircut because it's zeitgeisty.
No, exactly.
Did you notice in
she didn't have that haircut in the comics, let me say.
In her parallel universe, it's Peter Parker who dies, but she describes to motivate her, but she describes him as just her best friend. And this movie ends with her saying friends when she can tell that Miles Morales is sort of interested in her romantically.
I think that might be because they've established that like the Peter Parker in all the universes is like in his mid-30s, and she's like supposed to be 16.
I think he's her age in that universe because
It would make it's what happens in the comics because he becomes the Lizard, and then because she's not like, it's actually admittedly a decent piece of logic. She's not Peter Parker, so she doesn't know how to do fucking like particle physics and shit. So she just has to kill him.
Huh.
Yeah. At least I think that's what I remember from the comics. Someone's gonna be like, actually, the cure that she gives him interferes with like his weak blood and whatever. But I don't know.
But it felt like, and I don't know if it means anything, but like it felt like one of those things like they kind of did with the new Star Wars movies, where it's like she can't have a romantic interest or a male romantic interest or have a thing with the male character because it's somehow going to be like demeaning or insufficiently feminine.
No, they're dating in the book.
They want to get people excited about her being gay or something.
I'm looking at the Marvel. Marvel
It
Wiki.
felt slightly pointed. Not that it's inherently a bad thing, but just it felt like one of those it felt like a cynically motivated choice that she can't be or have a romantic interest.
Okay, yeah, no, they're not dating in that universe, which is fucking that's like, it admittedly makes sense because it's like, without the newfound confidence that going through spider puberty gives him, he would not be able to pull a bitch like that. He would not be pulling a Dasha.
Oh, that's true. That does make a certain kind of sense.
But that being said, the comics are bad and they're made by a guy who has misconduct
just fully move
allegations.
into, I know you already broached sort of your like read the Spider-Man 2099.
Well, there's one other thing.
Comics, but yeah, what
is that we've touched on before, which is just the franchise self-referential meta stuff, the whole like how it's all like the tropes of a Spider-Man story are just literally a plot point, and how I guess I find it a little hard to square the emotional stakes with the like meta animation jokes with the Spider-Ham and
I had an easier
noir
time.
Spider-Man being everything is in black and white.
That's the one thing this movie does that I never touched on that sort of feeds into your point. None of the scenes in this movie are longer than 10 minutes, dude. This movie, as someone who was on ADHD medication at the time of watching this, it was very hard to follow. If I was not on my ADHD medication, I bet this movie would be very easy to follow. I don't mean like the plot writ large because it's paper thin. I just mean like the moment to moment like spatial reality stuff, because the scenes will cut to other shit.
There's not a lot of quiet or contemplative moments or long shots or long scenes. Everything's just bang, 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 bang. Like it's effective at what it's trying to do, but it's just frustrating that everything seems to work that way, especially if it's animation or aimed at all audiences. But I'm sick of, and we talked about this with Logan, right? I'm sick of a movie existing to market its intellectual property to me as the audience member who's already watching it above and beyond being a movie, where it's like we need to talk about Spider-Man as a concept and a character in culture, not just a character within their own universe, plural universes. And we need to reference our own fandom for Spider-Man and play at our own metatextual fucking nostalgia and attachment to the character and all these really ham-handed obvious ways that displace the internal logic of the world or the story or its themes. Like nothing is just a story that everything's about itself, and it's so fucking
if I already wasn't. I was already pissed off from the word jump in this movie because the very first frame is the comics code sign.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, you went off over that,
which is fine. You can reclaim that all you want. I bought a sticker actually that goes to charity of it. It's a great little sign and it means a lot, especially if you like know anything about comics. But the Sony Corporation does not get to like reclaim that. You know, it's like it was a tool of self-enforced corporate censorship to avoid the like anti-communist witch hunts that were sweeping the nation and led to comic books essentially enduring like a half century of just incredibly like reactionary standards forced upon them, where like you couldn't even, a lot of time there was a comic where there was like, eventually they just said fuck it and released it without the sticker on it, where it's like you couldn't even show a black man emoting in a comic for a while because it's like, no, they have to
the
be like
comics
this
code was outrageous. Like
it was outrageous. And this movie does not get to reclaim that, especially factoring in the fact that like everyone involved in this outside of the voice cast was like white as snow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that speaks to something, I think, where people talk about wokeness now. And I mean, like, I agree. There's the kind of corporate faux progressive HR culture stuff is annoying and sucks, but it's nothing like the moral panics and the Red Scare of the 30s, 40s, and 50s that like made American culture fucking it set it back like a century, and we're still like, the fact that all the superhero stuff is the way it is and dominates culture the way it does now is still an echo.
The comics code basically
ripple
killed
from
people.
that. Yeah.
Like there were like the fucking the guys that created Superman had to do porn because they couldn't get work anywhere else because they'd worked in comics, and working to comics was tantamount to working in pornography. It was like, if you worked, there's a famous quote by Wally Wood, who co-created Daredevil and was later like literally living in like a fucking homeless shelter when he died.
Jesus.
Where he was like, yeah, if I did it all over again, I would have made the same choices, but I would have cut off my hands, I believe is the quote.
Holy shit.
Hold on. If I had to do it all over again, I'd cut off my hands, because he was phenomenal. He was so talented. And so many of these guys were like genuinely astounding artists who were working since their teens, and a lot of the times working their way up, like fresh off the boat immigrants, a lot of these guys, a lot of Jewish people, a lot of black people, a lot of gay people. And then like that was the only place that they could work because they had dedicated decades of their life to honing this craft. And like, if you worked in this industry and you worked in this industry before a certain point, you were seen as like akin to Jeffrey Epstein or like the Rosenbergs. Like you were an enemy of the state. You were corrupting children. Honestly, a lot of the same way people react about LGBT people and trans people specifically.
Yeah, the targets targeting your kids.
Which is why, even though I find making Gwen Stacy trans a dumb decision, or whatever they're doing, whatever pandering they're doing is bad, but you could genuinely talk about that in an interesting way, because it's like, for a brief period in time, like if you worked in comic books, you were a groomer. You know, you were grooming kids into criminality. It wasn't sexual. It was much more like you're grooming them
just
into delinquency,
moral decay.
Yeah, and moral decay and disrespecting their elders. And you could talk about that, but you can't talk about that at the Sony corporate, the multinational Sony corporation.
Yeah. Our problem with all this stuff is that it is so purely commercially motivated, not coming from like any kind of really sincere, thoughtful place of artistic expression.
None of it. No.
For all of their complaints about freedom of speech, it is the right wing anti-capital A capital W anti-woke guys who are the historical descendants and mirror image of the Hays Code, Comics Code Authority.
Yeah. Then they were the people that were doing the canceling, you know?
Yeah.
Like for all that people rail against cancel culture, that's what that shit is real cancel culture. It's not losing your fake internet job because you like, you know, did hate speech. It's like it's literally being forced into the poorhouse because you drew like a Batman comic that had a gay pun in it that someone decided after the fact was a gay pun, and decided that you were like teaching kids to like punch their mom and dad in the face.
Yeah. It's not, oh, you got yelled at on the internet by a bunch of teenagers.
Exactly.
It was your life was destroyed by the most powerful people in your industry and in the country because you were like maybe discernibly a socialist or oppose segregation or something like
Yeah.
that in the 50s.
I mean, they destroyed EC Comics because their covers were too graphic. You know, they had blood dripping on the covers. They literally like put like hundreds of guys out of work because they decided that you showed too much blood in your comics.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah,
freedom
'cause
of speech and all that, but
That's
you know, you
that's what
can
I was
fucking-
saying. The superhero stuff dominates because everything else in the comics medium was destroyed by that moral
destroyed.
panic and by the companies in charge just completely caving into the path of least resistance.
There's no tangible evidence to the proof of this, but you could genuinely say that that like DC and Marvel might have benefited and honestly possibly encouraged the formation of the Comics Code, because superhero stuff was fucking dying after World War II. No one gave a shit. It was a propaganda comic that you read because you saw like hordes of Japanese people or hordes of German people getting mowed down on the covers, and you were like, oh, if I read this, it'll happen in real life. You know, it'll help the troops carry on, and like every every
gotta
cent
support
sold goes to
troop
war
representation.
bonds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it was for a good cause, it's for stopping the Nazis. So that was good. But like after the fact, it was like, yeah, no one gave a shit. Like, like kids and young adults weren't sitting around reading comics all day waiting to be drafted. They were working 20 hours at the factory, And so then comics became more like, this is to make your 11-year-old son shit his pants,
Yeah.
We got way off topic with
Yeah,
this
so
one.
we're
This is a 2-hour
over
episode.
2
I'm
hours
calling
now,
it.
so we should
It's
wrap it
because
up.
I think if you're like
it's
a
actually
regular...
too late for me now to get. I needed to get fertilizer, but I guess I'll have to do it
shit!
tomorrow.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to keep you that. I was gonna say, I think like for the average audience member, this movie, because I mean, like it, like at a basic level of competence, it's decent. It's good. But I think our dislike of it probably seems way out of proportion to what it is and does. And I think we needed to kind of cover this wider ground to articulate that. Why it's not just a nice stylized animated movie that we can't just enjoy. And it's because it grasps at all of these larger things and ideas in an actively frustrating,
they're not
stupid, cynical way.
Yeah, they decided to make the movie about. They could have just made a movie about Miles. They didn't. But it's like, no, this is the Black Spider-Man movie. You have to see it because it's got black artists in it, and you got to support black artists, and that's all well and good. But then it's like the actual, material realities of this doesn't shake out, and that's why I don't like the movie. It's pretty and stuff, but I just couldn't shy away from like the fact that Miles is just like the worst fucking white dog shit. He's been around for 12, 13 years now or some shit, and he has not said the N-word once. And I'm sorry, like, I don't care. As a black person,
okay,
I've said it. I've said it on the podcast. I've said I can say it.
You've called
like,
me it.
It doesn't exactly. Like it doesn't. You could be. Yes, there are black people that say it less than others, but I don't think there's a single African American person on the planet that's never just let it fly once. It's like.
Now I would say, is that why Quentin Tarantino is woke? Because he'll have his characters black and white say it.
Actually, yes, that he does not shy away from the material realities of racism and the casual nature of it, where it's like it'll just come up in conversation. This is our most right-wing episode ever. Like an Inglorious, or not Inglorious Bastard. Or actually, yes, an Inglorious Bastards, where it's like they're talking about King Kong, and then they're like, making slave jokes. It's like, yeah, that's how you act.
A guy in the 40s.
that's the white person. That's the evil white person version of just letting it fly. It's like, yeah, it's funny to you,
That's
for a different reason that it's funny to black people. It's funny to black people because it just sounds fun to say. You can say that you're reclaiming it. I don't want to get into the politics of saying the N-word, because it's like, it's just a fun word to say.
So next tune in next episode
we gotta,
for Black Panther.
Yeah, we're doing Black
We're
Panther
doubling
next,
down.
guys. But
I don't actually have. It'll probably be half the length of this because I just don't give a shit about Black Panther. Spider-Man. That was the first comic I ever read. I have very strong feelings about Spider-Man. I still to this day have not read a Black Panther comic.
But watch something else. I mean, I think this movie's pretty good, but like I 100% am behind all the same like criticisms that we just put forward. So it's a like with an asterisk. So I'm giving out a couple watch something else's. If you're I mean what this really made me want to rewatch upon revisiting, I just wanted to watch Promare again. I know I've already said that for Avengers, but like, I don't know, maybe if Spider-Verse can be like given a positive for me for anything, I think there's probably like a direct line to be made between like Spider-Verse and then Promare coming out, because it did bring out some good shit. But I would also say if you're looking for like really high octane, colorful animation, go watch some Hungarian animation. There's one
Tragedy of Man.
I was gonna say Son of the White Mare, which is probably I think the most well known of those of like the Hungarian animation of like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That was kind of its height. But if you have a movie subscription, there is a film called Bubble Bath that is just like some of the most visually insane and creative animation you will ever see. Just like no such thing as being like on model. Like that's not a concept. Like characters will like go from like abstract Picasso like shapes to like skinny caricatures in like a matter of seconds. It's really one of the most visually like insane things I've seen this year. And I also watched Hideaki Anno's Re Cutie Honey as prep for Shin Kamen Rider, which we've already spent way too much of the runtime talking about other stuff, so I'm not going to say anything about Shin Kamen Rider, but yeah, definitely check the fuck out Re Cutie Honey, because that's also Ime Ishii worked on that, and you can also see like the genesis of like not just Promare, but like Kill la Kill, Panty and Stalking in Re Cutie Honey. So yeah, go watch that shit.
You know what? Just watch that episode of The Simpsons where Homer becomes 3D. That Halloween special
3D
episode
Homer
from like 1996.
Huh? That's weird. It's like something out of that Twilighty show about that zone.
I'm gonna pick something with black people in it since neither one of you did.
Oh, fuck you, bitch. I couldn't think of any that like.
No, I'm fucking with you.
Met.
Watch Coonskin.
Oh yeah, watch some Ralph Bakshi.
Watch Coonskin.
Yeah,
watch any Ralph Bakshi, because even though some of the language is dated, Ralph Bakshi has a much more nuanced and learned and like intimate relationship with black people, due to the fact that like he literally like was growing up right next to them. Yes, some of it will be off-putting if you're someone who's never seen any of his films, but it's not offensive. It's, in fact, if anything, it's really lets the Italians have it, actually, that movie.
Oh yeah, no, Italian people, like is it in Fritz a Cat that they're just straight up fucking gay clowns?
Yeah, no, it's like every single one. They're like gay clowns or they're pigs. I don't know what beef he has with Italian people. I have no beef with Italian people
warranted.
as a whole.
We're terrible.
I have you guys like I didn't grow up in the East Coast. I guess everyone in the East Coast was like living in Some Like It Hot, where like Italian people were just like spitting at black people or they were trying to fuck them. But I grew up on the East Coast where it's like there were like 3 Italians and they were all 87,000 years old. So no beef, But
no,
yeah, that's a
Bakshi
great.
was doing
great
correct
film.
Italian representation, in my opinion.
That's a great film. And then just read any other Spider-Man comic from before 1994. Read Spider-Man 2099.
Actually, I just want to say on that note, just before we sign off, that makes me think about something, which is that like any genuine artistic expression where you're just putting yourself and your view of the world out there is gonna carry prejudices and ignorances with it, because nobody has an absolute perspective of the world. So like that has to be an acceptable part of art, right? Not being like outright a Nazi, but like all art, all expression that's really creative is going to carry biases and ignorances and prejudices and misapprehensions with it, because that's built into the human condition, and we have to fucking live with it and accept it and even love it and find utility in it in the perspectives of others for both what they see and don't see.
Hell yeah. So, well, before we sign off for the night, we got two brand new patrons. So thank you to Tino, aka Movie Bob Walker. That is, I still have yet to see the movie Slob at a premiere, or like a Boston-based film event. And when I do, I'm gonna like point and shriek at him like Donald Sutherland at the end of Body Snatchers. I'm gonna like scream Lindsay Ellis's name. And thank you to this came through at 7:00 this morning.
Yeah, just under the wire.
Thank you to Vince right under. So unfortunately, Vince, you missed the Patreon raffle. I polled, and our winner is the Beak trademark, and he's or they are going to have us watch V for Vendetta, because they want to hear Stu talk more about Alan Moore.
Well, I think actually Cole probably fully knows more about Alan Moore than I do.
You know what? That's actually one of my more weak spots, where I've only read it once.
I've read it once. I was thinking I'd reread it and then we could do the movie. Yeah,
it's okay. The movie's fine, actually. We'll probably have a good time with it.
No, I think that'll be a solid app. A good recommend. Something interesting. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you so much to our patrons. It really does make a difference in our lives that you kick us a few bucks, especially here.
Actually, literally, yes. Actually, you guys, I got my hours changed at work, so I'm working about 3 hours less, and I was able to take the money out of my Patreon and still have the same paycheck that I was used to. So thank you guys.
And we'll see you again. We'll see you again soon with more transgressive, racially loaded commentary.
Yeah, next episode, our most racist yet. Bye. Oh my god.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
Jim's not going to appreciate that.
Shout out to Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Shout out to Jim.
Hi, Jim.
This is our most right-wing episode ever.